this week on the social. And you're not invisible. Hunter Hayes, the country singing sensation, stops by to hang out with the ladies.
Welcome back. This is something that I find absolutely terrifying, and we all need to work together to fix it. According to new research, the average girl's self-esteem peaks at age 9, and then it takes a nosedive.
Here to help us understand why and what we can do about it is the author of 9 Ways We're Screwing Up Our Girls and How We Can Stop, Anea. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Anea, we're going to jump right in. The first part of your book talks about female inferiority, and you say by giving up our last names when we marry, and giving our children their father's names, we send the wrong message to our girls. Why
you are diving right in.
Yeah, diving right in.
So first of all, I think it's important to say that this tradition is something that was rooted in the belief that girls are first the property of their fathers and then of their husbands. Most of us just sort of default to diving into the tradition and perpetuating it without realizing that. So most importantly, it's about choice. Not just doing it by default, so that we send a different message. We say that your identity as a woman is every bit as important as your husband's identity.
Well, I kept my identity. I kept my father's name, which is also kind of, troubling. But I didn't pass it on. Like, my sons took my husband's name, my partner's name. Sorry. Now we're getting
into problems. Melissa and I, we have hyphenated names. My surname and my ex's surname and Ryan.
My daughter has both of our last names. Right, mine too. I have 2 daughters. They both have hyphenated. And that's where it gets a little dicey, right? Because generation after generation, again, the main thing is choice, right? So my daughters, when they decide to get married, will hopefully at least have a conversation with their husbands-to-be about what they should do and come up with their own solution. Maybe they create a new name. But we just don't want to keep defaulting to traditions that are rooted in female inferiority.
What do you say to people who say, you know what, it's just a nice tradition, I got married, I took my husband's last name,
what's the big deal?
What's the big deal?
I say at least have the conversation with your daughter about why you chose to do it so that she knows she has a choice. Empowerment is about choice, and there is no choice if there isn't more than one option.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so another thing, female specific, is about menstruation in particular, and a lot of people find discussing it uncomfortable. You're saying, however, though, it actually impacts a young girl's self-worth. Sure. How so?
Well, first of all, menstruation is something that is a fundamental part of being female. So if we're not going to talk about it, mostly because we suggest that we're not talking about something because it's shameful or secretive, it's something that's bad. So we're effectively telling girls that there's something bad or shameful about being female. So talking about it openly helps keep them connected to their bodies, which is really important to giving them the tools to protect their body ultimately, right? If they disconnect from their bodies, they don't want to talk about it, chances are when they're in predicaments that they get into as they're older, they're not going to be willing to be like, no, don't touch me like that, or that doesn't feel good. This is my body, they're my rules.
What about the language around it, like the code terms, like my Aunt Flo's here, or whatever?
Same thing.
Is that good or bad?
Look, I think that any talking about it for the most part is a step in the right direction. But it's still, when we have code names, the idea is still that we're not supposed to talk about what we're really talking about. And that still perpetuates the same message.
Your book notes that a girl's desire to please will make her more susceptible to drug and alcohol use and risky sexual behavior. How do we stop girls from developing the need to please?
Okay, so we have to first ditch this whole idea of, girls are sugar and spice and everything nice, and they're always supposed to be making sure that everyone else is taken care of first. I always say to girls and to women the whole airplane motto, put on your own oxygen mask first and then help others, or, the person next to you is going to die, or you're going to die and you won't be able to help them. So we have to teach them to have a voice, to take ownership, to have personal agency. That's really what this book is about, is teaching girls to have personal agency, believe they have a voice, believe that they can speak up for themselves and not be, say, with a boy, feeling like they have to say yes because to say no would be to disappoint him.
I love that idea.
Yeah. So I have a 9-year-old daughter who doesn't have the disease to please. She just has the opposite. So how do I get it? It's like my way or the highway. And I'm like, because I said so, because I'm your mother, And that gets old and tired. So how do I find a middle ground, or how do we all find a middle ground? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one.
No, I have the same problem. When you're raising empowered girls,
Yes.
you have to sort of walk that fine line. And I think it's really about teaching them how to handle themselves. They live in the world with other people, right? So there's that middle ground of saying, how do I find balance between identifying what it is that I want is important to me and communicating that, and maybe meeting somebody halfway, but not constantly compromising, as so many of us as women do. We find ourselves at 40 going, I'm not sure how I got here, because I've essentially become a different person by not speaking up about what's important to me and always deferring to the other.
You were talking a little bit before about agency around bodies, and I think there's this line in your book that is so important. It says that every girl must be encouraged and allowed to be the subject of her own desire rather than the object of someone else's. I mean, it's so powerful. How do we teach girls to take control of their sexuality?
Okay, so first of all, going back to the menstruation thing and keeping them connected to their bodies, I think it's really important first to make girls feel like having a sense of personal agency with regard to their sexuality is a must, right? We don't tell boys they're never supposed to talk about sex, they're never supposed to touch themselves, right? Whereas with girls,
Actually, I've told my son.
yeah, stop. No, but because, and I often say to girls and to women, like, you can't expect anyone else to know how to please you if you don't first know how to please yourself, if you don't understand your body. This is essential. So, yes, I think by keeping the conversation open, by being as open and honest about it as you would probably be with your son, we tend to be a little bit more comfortable with boys because we're terrified with girls about what being sexually active means. Not only in terms of the potential of pregnancy, but what will people say about my daughter if she's sexually active, right? Boys are studs, girls are sluts. So we start to, can I say that?
Yeah. You did. It's
I
out
did.
there. Go for it, girl.
Yes, so we really want to start, evening the playing field, and keeping the conversation is essential. Communication, open communication is essential.
Here's a provocative one. You say fathers contribute to the problem of female inferiority when they use terms like daddy's little girl and princess, but some would argue that these are just terms of endearment.
And I would say that most of the time, the intentions behind that language they're very endearing. A father, his little girl comes out into the world and he thinks she's the best thing since sliced bread. He can't even believe he loves her so much. The problem is that unlike with boys who we raise to, we say, figure out who you want to be, go out there and make something of yourself, and then, find a partner to come along for the ride. We tell girls essentially that they're perpetually helpless little damsels in distress, and fairy tales just do a terrible job of reinforcing this, or a very good job of reinforcing it. And ultimately, they forget that they do have the ability to make decisions of their own, to create their own path, and then bring a partner along, as opposed to believing that their happily ever after only begins after they become connected to a male and then created because of him.
Do we really have to stop this conversation? I know.
Sorry.
All day. It's fascinating.
Thank you.
So eye-opening. We're going to take what you've said and put it into action. Thank you so much.
Thank
Anea.
you. My pleasure.
The book is in stores right now. Make sure you pick up a copy today and empower the young girls in your life. Right here. That's the book right here. Don't go anywhere because we'll be right back.